The fluorescent lights of Portland General Hospital hummed their sterile song as I sat beside Mom's bed, watching the rhythmic beep of her heart monitor. It was February 14th, Valentine's Day, though there was nothing romantic about watching the woman who raised you slowly slip away from pancreatic cancer. My name is Lily Anderson, and I was 23 years old when my mother, Rebecca, took her final breath. Dad, Michael Anderson, hadn't left her side in almost 19 hours. His hand gripped hers so tightly that his knuckles had turned white, as if he could physically prevent her from leaving. "I can't do this without you, Becca," he kept whispering, his voice hoarse from crying. "Please don't leave me. We still have so much time left. Please, baby, please stay." The nurses were incredible, but even their professional compassion had limits. When Mom's breathing finally stopped at 2:47 a.m., Dad wouldn't release her hand. He kept talking to her, stroking her hair, begging her to wake up. It took 3 nurses and the attending physician to convince him to let go. They had to give him a sedative just to get him to leave the room. I remember standing in that sterile hallway, watching through the window as they prepared Mom's body and thinking this was the worst moment of my life. I had no idea it was only the beginning. Our home in the suburbs of Beaverton, Oregon, had always been filled with warmth. Mom was an interior designer who loved vintage furniture and collected antique teacups. Every corner of our split-level ranch held memories. The kitchen where we baked chocolate chip cookies every Sunday, the living room where we watched old movies during thunderstorms, the garden where Mom grew prize-winning roses. But when we returned from the hospital that frigid February morning, the house felt different. It was like the warmth had been sucked out, replaced by a coldness that had nothing to do with the Oregon winter. Dad walked through the door and just stood in the entryway for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. I took his coat, made him sit on the couch, brought him water he didn't drink. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't even acknowledge I was there. For the next several weeks, nothing in the house changed. Mom's reading glasses still sat on the end table next to her half-finished mystery novel. Her favorite cardigan hung over the back of the kitchen chair. Her coffee mug, the blue one with World's Best Mom that I'd given her for Mother's Day 5 years ago, remained on the counter with the faint imprint of her lipstick on the rim. Every morning, I'd see that lipstick mark and break down crying while making breakfast. But Dad wouldn't let me wash it. He wouldn't let me touch any of Mom's things. "Leave everything exactly as it is," he told me, his voice flat and distant. She'd want it this way. I understood grief. I was drowning in it myself. But even through my own pain, I could see that Dad's grief was different. It wasn't just sadness. It was a complete disconnection from reality. 3 weeks after the funeral, Dad asked me to cook Mom's signature dish, her famous honey-glazed salmon with roasted vegetables. "Lily, sweetheart," he said, his eyes distant. "Could you make your mother's salmon tonight? The recipe is in her box. It would help me feel like she's still here with us." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him that pretending wouldn't help either of us heal, but the desperate look in his eyes stopped me. So I cooked the salmon, following Mom's handwritten recipe card, my tears falling into the honey glaze. While I cooked, I heard the sound of Mom's laughter coming from the living room. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Then I realized Dad was watching old home videos. Our trip to Cannon Beach when I was 12, Christmas mornings, birthdays, the anniversary party we'd thrown for Mom and Dad's 20th wedding anniversary just 18 months ago. He watched those videos every single night, hours and hours of them, on repeat. At first, I thought it might be therapeutic, remembering the good times, celebrating her life rather than mourning her death. Mom's therapist friends from her book club said everyone grieves differently. But as winter melted into spring and spring bloomed into early summer, Dad's behavior shifted from grief to something far more disturbing. I was a graduate student at Portland State University, working on my master's in social work. I'd taken the semester off after Mom's diagnosis, planning to return in the fall. I stayed home to take care of Dad, to handle the estate paperwork, to make sure someone was there for him. By April, I started noticing Dad wasn't sleeping in their bedroom anymore. He'd moved to the couch in the den, sleeping under the throw blanket Mom had crocheted years ago. When I asked him about it, he looked at me with hollow eyes. I can't sleep in that room, Lily. I hear her breathing. I smell her perfume, that vanilla and jasmine scent she always wore. Sometimes I swear I can feel her side of the bed moving, like she's turning over in her sleep. It's driving me crazy. I convinced him to see Dr. Harrison, a grief counselor recommended by our family physician. Dad actually went, twice a week for the first month. I felt hopeful, thinking professional help would guide him through this darkness. But then I found the appointment cards in the trash. Not just one or two, but weeks' worth of them. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. I don't need someone to tell me how to feel about losing my wife," he snapped, his tone sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Those people don't understand what Rebecca and I had. They want me to move on. How am I supposed to move on from my soulmate?" It happened on a Tuesday night in late April. I'd been studying for the GRE in my childhood bedroom. I was planning to apply for a PhD program in the fall. I walked down the darkened hallway to the bathroom, and Dad was standing there, just outside his bedroom door. "Rebecca," he said softly, his voice filled with such tender longing that my blood ran cold. I froze, my hand on the bathroom doorknob. "Dad?" He blinked, seemed to come back to himself. "I'm sorry, Lily. In this light, from behind, you looked just like her for a second. The way you're wearing your hair lately." I'd recently started wearing my long auburn hair in a loose bun, the way Mom always had. It was unconscious, a way of feeling close to her. Now it felt creepy. "Dad, I'm Lily, your daughter. I'm not Mom." "I know that," he said, but something in his eyes made me doubt it. There was a distant, glassy quality to his gaze, like he was looking at me, but seeing someone else. I thought that would be the end of it. A one-time slip in a moment of grief and darkness. But the name-calling continued. Every few days, he'd call me Rebecca. Sometimes he'd catch himself and apologize. Sometimes he wouldn't even seem to notice. That's when the packages started arriving. I came home from the library one afternoon in early May to find 3 shopping bags on my bed. Inside were clothes, floral print blouses, long flowing skirts, cardigans in soft pastels. They were beautiful, expensive, and exactly the style Mom had loved. Dad was in the kitchen making dinner when I found him. "Dad, what are these clothes on my bed?" "Oh, those!" He didn't look up from chopping vegetables. "They were on sale at Nordstrom. I thought you'd look nice in them. You never dress up anymore." "Dad, these are Mom's style, not mine." I was more of a jeans and t-shirt person, comfortable and casual. His knife paused mid-chop. "Exactly," he said, and the way he smiled made my stomach turn. "You'd look beautiful in them, just like she did." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the clothes away, to shake him, to make him see how wrong this was. Instead, I carefully folded them and put them in the back of my closet, telling myself he meant well, that this was just another manifestation of his grief. But the next week, more clothes appeared. And the week after that, my closet was slowly filling with a wardrobe that wasn't mine. It was Mom's ghost's wardrobe, and Dad wanted me to wear it. Then my shampoo changed. I'd always used herbal essences, the purple bottle with the floral scent. One morning, I reached for it and found Mom's brand instead. An expensive organic lavender shampoo from a boutique in downtown Portland. I switched it back to my brand. 2 days later, the lavender shampoo was back. "Dad, did you buy this shampoo?" I asked, holding up the bottle. "You need to take better care of your hair," he said without looking at me. "Rebecca always had such beautiful hair because she used quality products. My name is Lily, and Mom is gone." He didn't respond, just walked away, humming the song that had played at their wedding, At Last, by Etta James. I woke up on a Thursday morning in late May to find all of my belongings had been moved. Not thrown away or damaged. Carefully, lovingly moved from my childhood bedroom to the master bedroom. My clothes were in Mom's closet. My laptop was on Mom's side of the dresser. My books were on her nightstand. I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, my heart pounding with a fear I couldn't quite name yet. This was crossing a line from concerning to terrifying. I found Dad in the kitchen, making coffee like it was any normal morning. "Dad, why did you move all my stuff to your bedroom?" My voice was shaking. He turned to me, and his eyes were wet with tears. I need you close, Rebecca. He caught himself, or pretended to. Lily! I mean Lily! The nightmares are getting worse. I need to know you're safe, that you're nearby. That's not healthy, Dad. I need my own space. I'm an adult. Please, he whispered, and the desperation in his voice made me hesitate. Just for a little while, until I can sleep better. Please. Against every instinct screaming at me to say no, I agreed. I told myself it was temporary, that he was still grieving and needed time, that I could handle this until he got better. That was the last time he called me Lily. Their anniversary was June 2nd. They'd been married for 22 years. Would have been if Mom were still alive. I'd been dreading the date, knowing it would be hard for both of us. I woke up early that morning, planning to make Dad breakfast, and maybe suggest we visit Mom's grave together, to honor her memory properly. But I never got the chance. The smell hit me first. Roses, dozens of them, their perfume thick and cloying in the air. Then the music, at last, playing softly from the speaker on the dresser. And then I became aware of weight on the bed beside me. I opened my eyes to find Dad sitting on the edge of the bed, dressed in a suit. The same suit he'd worn to their wedding, which he'd somehow managed to still fit into. He was holding a breakfast tray with pancakes, strawberries, and champagne in crystal flutes. The entire room was filled with red roses, candles burning on every surface. "Happy anniversary, my darling," he said, his smile wide and completely wrong. "I can't believe it's been 22 beautiful years. You haven't aged a day." Terror flooded through me. "Dad, what is this?" Our anniversary celebration, of course." He set the tray on my lap. "I made your favorite, strawberry pancakes with real maple syrup, just like I did on our first anniversary." I tried to push the tray away, but a wave of dizziness hit me so hard I nearly fell back against the pillows. The room spun, and my limbs felt heavy, disconnected. "You've been so tense lately, Rebecca," Dad said, his voice soft and loving. "So stressed. I put some of your old anxiety medication in your water glass last night, the one on the nightstand, just to help you relax for our special day." Drugged. He drugged me. I tried to sit up, to get away, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My vision blurred at the edges. Through the fog, I saw him reach into the closet and pull out something red and lacy, lingerie that I'd never seen before, but recognized from old photos. Mom's wedding night lingerie that she'd saved in a keepsake box. "You wore this on our wedding night," he said, holding it up with reverent care. "I'll never forget how beautiful you looked. It's time to wear it again, my love." The room tilted. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a nightmare. "Dad, please!" My voice came out slurred, weak. "You're scaring me. I'm not Mom. I'm Lily, your daughter." But his eyes were completely empty of recognition. He looked at me the way he'd looked at Mom, with adoration, desire, and a love that had twisted into something monstrous. When I managed to push the breakfast tray away, sending pancakes and champagne across the white comforter, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron-tight, painful. "Why are you acting like this, Rebecca? Why are you ruining our special day?" I screamed. It was all I could do. I screamed with everything in me, even as the drugs pulled at my consciousness, trying to drag me under. "Mom is dead!" I shrieked at him. "She's been dead for 4 months! I'm Lily! I'm your daughter!" His face contorted with rage, an expression I'd never seen on my gentle father before. "Stop lying to me! You're my wife! You've always been my wife! Stop this cruel game!" He lunged forward, trying to kiss me, his hands grabbing at my clothes, his breath hot on my face. "This is our anniversary, baby. Stop pretending you don't remember our first time. Remember how perfect it was? How you said you'd love me forever?" I bit his lip as hard as I could, tasting blood. He jerked back with a yelp of pain and surprise, and in that split second, I threw myself off the bed. The world tilted dangerously. Whatever he'd given me was strong, making my legs weak and my coordination off. I stumbled toward the bathroom, using the walls for support, hearing him behind me calling out in that sickeningly sweet voice, "Rebecca, darling, come back. Don't lock me out on our special day. I just want to love you like I used to." I barely made it through the bathroom door, slamming it shut and turning the lock with trembling fingers just as he reached it. He pounded on the wood, and I backed away until I hit the cold tile of the bathtub. "I'll be gentle, I promise," he coaxed through the door. "Just like our first time. You remember, don't you? In that little hotel in Seattle? You were so nervous, so beautiful. Please don't be scared, my love. I would never hurt you." When I didn't respond, couldn't respond through my sobs, his tone shifted completely. "Rebecca, open this door right now. A wife doesn't lock out her husband. You're being unreasonable. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me on our anniversary." I realized with horror that I didn't have my phone. It was charging in the living room, too far away to do me any good. I was trapped, drugged, with a locked door as the only thing between me and my father, who truly believed I was his dead wife. Then I heard it. The sound of fist meeting wood, again and again. He was punching through the bathroom door. "Help!" I screamed, praying our neighbors might hear. "Somebody help me, please!" Chapter 10. The Rescue. God bless David Lee. Our 70-year-old neighbor, a retired Marine who lived next door with his wife, had been putting out his trash when he heard my screams. He later told me he'd thought I was being murdered, which, in a way, I was. The person I thought was my father was trying to kill who I really was. I heard David pounding on our front door, his voice booming with authority. "Michael, is everything all right in there? Open up." Dad's attack on the bathroom door paused. He called out, trying to sound normal. "Everything's fine, David. Rebecca's just having one of her episodes again. You know how she gets." But David wasn't buying it. "Michael, Rebecca's gone. She passed away 4 months ago. I'm calling the police right now." "No!" I sobbed from behind the bathroom door. "Help me! I'm not Mom! I'm Lily! Please help me!" The pounding on the bathroom door resumed with renewed violence. Splinters flew as Dad's fist broke through the wood. Through the hole, I could see his face. Twisted, desperate, completely unrecognizable. "There you are, sweetheart," he cooed, reaching through the hole to unlock the door. "No more hiding. This will all be easier if you just stop fighting." In his other hand, he held a syringe. "This will help you remember who you really are," he said. "Help you remember that you're my wife, my Rebecca. Just a little something to make you more comfortable." The door swung open. He stepped inside, backing me into the corner by the bathtub. I grabbed the toilet brush, the only weapon I had, and swung it at him, but he caught my wrist easily. He was always stronger than me. That's when we heard it, police sirens. Dad froze, syringe still in hand, confusion crossing his face. Why did David call the police? This is a private matter between husband and wife. 3 officers burst through our front door moments later, David guiding them straight to the bathroom. They found Dad on top of me, straddling my waist, syringe raised, my face streaked with tears, and his blood from where I'd bitten him. "Officers," Dad said calmly, as if this were a simple misunderstanding, "there's been some confusion. This is my wife, Rebecca. She's been having episodes since her medication changed. I was just trying to help her calm down." Even as they pulled him off me and put him in handcuffs, he kept insisting. "Rebecca, tell them. Tell them you're my wife. Tell them we've been married 22 years. Tell them about our anniversary." One of the officers, a woman with kind eyes, knelt beside me. "Miss, can you tell me your name?" "Lily," I sobbed. "Lily Anderson. I'm his daughter, not his wife, never his wife." Dad began thrashing in the handcuffs. "She's confused. She's sick. We've been married since 2001. We have a whole life together. Look around. Her things are everywhere. Our wedding photo is on the wall." As they led him away, he kept screaming, "Rebecca, I love you. Tell them. Tell them the truth. Don't let them take me away from you. We're supposed to grow old together." His voice echoed down the hallway, down the stairs, and I could still hear it as they loaded him into the police car. "Rebecca! Rebecca!" Dad was placed in the psychiatric unit at Oregon State Hospital, locked in the secure wing for patients deemed dangerous to themselves or others. The doctors said he was having a complete psychotic break from reality, a severe delusional disorder triggered by grief. They used terms like erotomania and Capgras delusion variant, fancy medical words that all meant the same thing. My father had lost his mind. For 2 months, I tried to put my life back together. I stayed with David and Martha Lee for the first few weeks, unable to sleep in that house full of roses and memories and horror. They treated me like the granddaughter they'd never had, making sure I ate, getting me into therapy, helping me file police reports and restraining orders. I returned to my graduate program, diving into my studies as a way to escape the nightmares that plagued me every night. I went to therapy 3 times a week with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a trauma specialist who helped me process what I now understood as sexual assault. Because that's what it was, even though nothing had actually happened on that terrible anniversary morning. The intent had been there, and that was enough to break something inside me. I thought I was healing. I thought the worst was behind me. Then came the morning in late August when I woke up nauseous. At first, I blamed it on stress. I'd been having panic attacks, trouble sleeping, nightmares that left me exhausted and shaking. But when the nausea continued for a week, when I realized my period was late, very late, a cold dread settled into my bones. I bought the pregnancy test at a drugstore 3 towns over, paranoid that someone in our neighborhood might see me and spread rumors. I drove back to the Lee's house where I was still staying, went straight to the guest bathroom, and took the test with shaking hands. Positive. I stared at those 2 pink lines until my vision blurred and my knees gave out. I sank to the cold tile floor, the test clutched in my hand, unable to process what I was seeing. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. I'd never been with anyone. I'd had boyfriends in high school, sure, but nothing serious. I'd had 1 kiss at prom with Tyler Chen, and that had been the extent of my romantic experience. I was 23 years old, focused on my education, and I'd never even been close to having sex. The only explanation made my stomach churn with a horror so profound I thought I might vomit right there on the bathroom floor. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Oregon State Hospital, Dad's psychiatric unit. I should have ignored it. Every therapy session had emphasized the importance of boundaries, of protecting myself, of not engaging with my abuser. But my hand reached for the phone anyway, some sick part of me needing to know. "Hello? Lily!" Dad's voice came through the line, eerily calm. Nothing like the raving madman who'd been dragged away in handcuffs. "How's our baby?" The test fell from my fingers, clattering onto the tile. In the background of the call, I heard an orderly shouting urgently to someone. There was a scuffle, the sound of the phone being grabbed away, and then the line went dead. I sat on that bathroom floor for 30 minutes, my mind racing. How did he know? How could he possibly know? Dr. Mitchell had encouraged me to write down everything I remembered about the months after Mom's death, to help process the trauma. I'd kept a detailed journal, trying to make sense of the timeline, trying to understand when Dad's grief had turned into delusion. But there was a gap in my memory. 3 days. 3 full days right after Mom's funeral, where everything felt foggy and disconnected. I'd attributed it to grief and exhaustion. I'd planned the entire funeral while Dad fell apart, dealing with caskets and flowers and catering and the endless parade of well-meaning relatives. Of course I'd been exhausted, but now, with those 2 pink lines staring at me from the bathroom floor, I remembered other things. I remembered waking up those mornings feeling groggy, like I'd been drugged. I remembered soreness that I'd blamed on sleeping wrong. I remembered Dad saying, "I helped you sleep better these nights, sweetheart. You needed rest." I'd thought he meant he'd given me Tylenol PM or Benadryl, something mild to help with insomnia. But what if it had been something stronger? What if those missing days weren't missing at all? Martha Lee found me on the bathroom floor an hour later, still clutching my phone, tears streaming down my face. She took one look at the pregnancy test, at my expression, and wrapped me in her arms without saying a word. "We need to call the police," she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. "And we need to go to the hospital." Detective Rachel Morrison of the Portland Police Department specialized in sexual assault cases. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that softened when she listened to my story. We sat in an interview room at the police station, and I told her everything: the anniversary morning, the drugging, Dad's delusion, and now the pregnancy. "Lily," she said carefully, "I need to ask you some difficult questions. During those 3 days after your mother's funeral, do you remember being anywhere besides home?" I shook my head. "I don't remember much of anything, Just fog. Did your father leave the house during those days? I tried to think back. I don't know. I remember being so tired, sleeping a lot. Dad would check on me, bring me water, tell me to rest. Detective Morrison exchanged a look with her partner, Detective James Wong. We're going to need to run a rape kit, she said gently. I know it's been months, but we might still find something. And we'll need blood tests. We can test for drugs that might have been in your system. The rape kit came back negative. Too much time had passed. But the blood tests showed traces of benzodiazepines in my system, even months later, suggesting I'd been given high doses for an extended period. Detective Morrison came to see me 3 days later, with news that made my blood run cold. We've been investigating your father's activities during that time period, she said. We pulled his credit card records and found something interesting. On February 16th, 3 days after your mother's funeral, he made a payment to Northwest Fertility Clinic. I felt the color drain from my face. A fertility clinic? We obtained a warrant for their security footage. Lily, I'm so sorry, but we found video of your father carrying you into the clinic. You appeared to be unconscious. He told the staff you were his wife, that you'd taken anxiety medication and needed his support during the procedure. The room spun. What procedure? Artificial insemination using sperm he'd donated earlier. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. We found records dating back to December, before your mother died. He'd been meeting with the clinic staff, setting everything up. My mother died in February. He'd been planning this since December. He was planning to replace her, I whispered. Even before she died, he was planning to replace her. With me. 2 days after this revelation, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Patricia Novak, Mom's younger sister. Aunt Patricia lived in Eugene, about 2 hours south of Portland. She and Mom had been close once, but they'd had a falling out years ago over something I was never quite clear about. Mom would always change the subject when I asked about it. Lily, honey, I heard about what happened with your father, she said, her voice tight with emotion. I'm so sorry. I had no idea things had gotten so bad. Thanks, Aunt Patricia. It's been really hard. I need to see you, she said urgently. There's something I need to tell you. Something about your father and your mother. Can you come to Eugene? Or I can come up there. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. What is it? Not over the phone. Please, this is important. Against my better judgment, and against Dr. Mitchell's advice to limit contact with anyone connected to Dad, I agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop halfway between Portland and Eugene. Aunt Patricia looked older than I remembered. She'd always been the wild one, the party girl, with blonde hair and bright clothes. But the woman who sat across from me at Java Junction looked worn down, with dark circles under her eyes, and nervous hands that couldn't stop fidgeting with her coffee cup. I'm so sorry, Lily, she started, tears already forming. I'm so sorry I didn't warn you. I didn't think he'd actually... I thought Rebecca dying would bring him back to reality. But I was wrong, so terribly wrong. Aunt Patricia, what are you talking about? She took a shaky breath. Your father's obsession with your mother wasn't healthy for a long time. Not just after she died. Before. Years before. It's why Rebecca and I stopped talking. My heart hammered in my chest. What do you mean? Rebecca came to me about 7 years ago. You would have been 16. She was scared, Lily. She told me that Michael had become controlling, possessive. He tracked her phone, went through her emails, got jealous when she talked to male friends or colleagues. He wanted to know where she was every second of every day. I remembered that time. I'd been so wrapped up in high school drama, SATs, college applications, boyfriend troubles, that I hadn't noticed anything wrong at home. She wanted to leave him, Patricia continued. She was planning to take you and move in with me in Eugene. But then she got sick. The cancer diagnosis came, and she thought she had to stay. For the insurance, for his help with medical bills, for stability during treatment. Tears streamed down my face. She stayed in a bad marriage because she was dying? She made me promise not to tell you. She didn't want you to know, didn't want your relationship with your father ruined. She thought... Patricia's voice broke. She thought she'd die before anything bad happened, that Michael would move on after she was gone, that you'd be safe. But she was wrong. So wrong. And Lily, there's something else. Something I only found out after Rebecca died. She pulled an envelope from her purse with trembling hands. I think Michael killed her. The world stopped. Inside the envelope were medical records, Mom's oncology files from the hospital, pages and pages of treatment notes, medication logs, and nurse observations. I worked in medical records before I retired, Patricia explained. I still have friends at Portland General. They shouldn't have given me these, but after what happened to you, they felt you deserved to know the truth. She pointed to a section dated February 13th, the day before Mom died. Your mother was stable that day. Her pain levels were managed. Her vitals were good. The doctors expected her to live at least another few weeks, maybe even months. But that night, someone increased her morphine dosage significantly. Someone who wasn't a nurse or doctor. I looked at the log. The notation read, "Family member administered pain medication at patient's request." "Dad," I whispered. The nurses assumed Rebecca asked for it, but look at the timestamps. This was administered at 11 p.m., when visiting hours were long over. Michael shouldn't have been in that room. And the dosage. She pointed to the numbers. That's 3 times what she was prescribed. That's enough to cause respiratory depression in someone already weakened by cancer. My mother hadn't died from cancer. She'd died from an overdose of morphine administered by my father. He killed her so he could replace her with you, Patricia said, her voice hollow. He couldn't stand the thought of losing her, so he decided to create her again, through you. The police arrested Patricia 2 days later. It turned out she'd been visiting Dad in the psychiatric facility. Not to condemn him, not to demand justice, but to help him. She'd been bringing him items from the house, including Mom's jewelry and photo albums. She'd been telling him that she believed Rebecca lived on through me, that his love was beautiful and pure. She'd been enabling his delusion. The recordings from the psychiatric facility revealed everything. Patricia had been planning to help Dad escape, to hide him at her house in Eugene until they could figure out how to help me remember that I was Rebecca. I just miss my sister so much, she sobbed during her interrogation, the footage of which Detective Morrison showed me. And Michael's love for her is so pure. Lily looks so much like Rebecca did at that age. She could be her. She should be her. Rebecca would want this. She'd want to come back. Grief had broken her mind too, turning her into an accomplice to attempted kidnapping and assault. With Patricia's arrest and confession, the case against Dad became ironclad. Detective Morrison worked tirelessly, building a case that included the fertility clinic records and security footage showing Dad carrying my unconscious body, hospital pharmacy records showing Dad's unauthorized access to Mom's medications, credit card statements revealing his purchases of Mom's clothes for me, the fertility treatments, even a fake wedding ring in my size, text messages between Dad and Patricia plotting my recovery from my delusion that I was Lily rather than Rebecca, testimony from the psychiatric facility staff about Dad's behavior and statements. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. The cemetery, Evergreen Memorial Park, where Mom was buried, had security cameras. The police pulled footage from the night of September 15th, exactly 7 months after Mom's death. Dad had been granted a supervised visit to the cemetery as part of his psychiatric treatment, a terrible decision that I fought against but was overruled on. The staff claimed it would help him process his grief, accept reality. Instead, standing at Mom's gravestone, Dad confessed everything. "I'm sorry I had to let you go, Rebecca," he said to the marble headstone, his voice captured clearly by the security camera hidden in a nearby tree. "But it was the only way. You were in so much pain, and I couldn't bear to see you suffer anymore." The orderly supervising him stood several feet away, giving him private time with his grief. "I increased your morphine that last night," Dad continued, touching the engraved letters of her name. "You told me once, remember? You said if it got too bad, if the pain was too much, you trusted me to help you rest. So I helped you rest, my love. I freed you from your suffering." He smiled at the gravestone. "And then I brought you back. Our daughter, our beautiful daughter, who looks so much like you did when we first met. She has your eyes, your smile, your spirit. With the right guidance, With enough love, she can be you again. We can be together again. The footage continued for another 10 minutes as he detailed his entire plan. The drugging, the fertility clinic, the clothes, the anniversary celebration. He spoke about it like it was the most romantic thing in the world. A love story for the ages. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, he said to the tombstone. But you understand, don't you, Becca? You always understood me. Love isn't supposed to end just because of something as insignificant as death. We made vows, till death do us part. Well, death did part us. But I found a way around that. I always find a way for us. When the orderly finally interrupted him, telling him it was time to go, Dad kissed the gravestone and whispered, "I'll see you soon, my love. I'll be with you again soon." The police arrested him for murder the next day. While the legal case built against Dad, I had a more immediate decision to make. I was 8 weeks pregnant. The baby was his. DNA testing confirmed it. Every pregnancy book I read, every ultrasound image I saw, made me feel sick. This wasn't a baby conceived in love. This was a violation, a horror, a physical manifestation of his delusion. Dr. Mitchell helped me understand my options. Whatever you decide, Lily, it's your choice. There's no right or wrong answer here. You need to do what's best for your mental health and your future. Martha Lee held my hand while I ugly cried in her kitchen. I can't have this baby, I sobbed. I can't look at a child every day and see him. I can't do it. She didn't judge me. She just held me and let me cry. David drove me to the clinic on a Tuesday morning in September. The protesters outside were holding signs about murder and sin, and I wanted to scream at them that they had no idea what real sin looked like. Real sin was what my father had done to me and my mother. The procedure was quick, clinical, less traumatic than I'd feared. But the emotional aftermath was devastating. Part of me felt relief. Enormous, overwhelming relief that I wouldn't have to carry that reminder of horror for the rest of my life. But another part felt guilty and sad, and angry that I'd been put in this position at all. I grieved. Not for the pregnancy, but for the innocence that had been stolen from me. For the father I thought I'd had. For the normal life I'd never get back. Recovery didn't happen in isolation. It happened through the incredible support network that formed around me. Dr. Mitchell continued our therapy sessions 3 times a week, helping me process not just the assault, but the murder, the deception, the violation of trust. She connected me with a support group for victims of familial sexual assault, a sentence I never thought would apply to me. The group met every Thursday evening in the basement of St. Patrick's Church downtown. There were 8 of us, all survivors of assault by family members. Hearing their stories, I realized how common this horror was, how many families hid these terrible secrets behind closed doors. There was Jennifer, whose stepfather had abused her from age 12 to 17. Marcus, whose uncle had groomed him during family barbecues. Elena, whose grandfather had assaulted her during holiday visits. Each story was different, but the themes were the same: betrayal of trust, violation of safety, family systems that failed to protect. Martha and David Lee became my chosen family. They'd lost their only daughter to leukemia 15 years ago, and they poured all that parental love into caring for me. Martha taught me to cook Korean food, her way of showing love. David taught me basic self-defense, helping me feel safe in my own body again. Detective Morrison became an unexpected ally. She went above and beyond her duty, checking in on me regularly, keeping me informed about the case, connecting me with victim advocacy resources. She'd lost her own sister to domestic violence and was determined that Dad would face full consequences. And then there was Naomi Chen, Tyler's older sister, who I'd known peripherally in high school. She was now a social worker specializing in trauma, and she reached out after hearing about my case through the professional grapevine. We met for coffee, and she became another crucial pillar of support. "You're not just a victim, Lily," Naomi told me. "You're a survivor, and eventually, when you're ready, you'll be a thriver. This doesn't define you, even though it's part of your story now." The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Dad's lawyer tried every trick in the book, claiming incompetence to stand trial, pushing for an insanity defense, arguing that his actions were the result of untreated mental illness and therefore not criminal. But the recorded confession at the cemetery changed everything. It proved he understood reality. He knew Mom was dead, knew I was his daughter, but chose his delusion anyway. That distinction was crucial. The difference between insanity and delusion, Detective Morrison explained, is that insane people don't know reality. Your father knew reality. He just preferred his fantasy. That makes him legally responsible for his actions. The trial was set for March, almost exactly 1 year after Mom's death. I'd have to testify, to tell my story in front of a courtroom full of strangers. The prosecution said my testimony was essential, that putting a face and voice to the horror would ensure a conviction. I was terrified. As winter turned to spring, I slowly started reclaiming my life. I moved out of the Lee's guest room and into a small apartment in the Pearl District with Naomi as my roommate. The building had excellent security, doorman, cameras, keycard access. I finally felt safe. I returned to my graduate program, though I'd switched my focus from general social work to trauma counseling. My own experience had shown me the desperate need for therapists who understood complex trauma, who could help survivors rebuild their lives. My professors were understanding about the time I'd missed. One of them, Dr. Angela Reeves, became a mentor. She'd survived childhood abuse herself and had dedicated her career to helping others heal. "Your trauma doesn't disqualify you from this work," she told me during a one-on-one meeting. "If anything, it makes you more qualified. You understand what survivors need because you are one. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself too." I started writing, not just a journal for therapy, but real writing. Essays about trauma, survival, the complicated nature of familial abuse. My writing caught the attention of a local magazine editor who asked me to submit a piece about my experience. The article, published anonymously as "The Daughter Who Became the Wife," went viral. Thousands of people reached out with their own stories of family betrayal, of systems that failed them, of the hard work of recovery. I realized I wasn't alone. Millions of us carried these wounds. As March approached, my anxiety about the trial intensified. I had nightmares about testifying, about seeing Dad again, about his lawyer tearing apart my testimony and making me look like I was exaggerating or lying. The prosecution team met with me multiple times to prepare me. Assistant District Attorney Linda Rodriguez was a force of nature, a 45-year-old Latina woman with a conviction rate that made defense attorneys sweat. "Lily, I'm going to ask you hard questions," she said during one of our preparation sessions. "Not because I don't believe you, but because I need you ready for what the defense will throw at you. Can you handle that?" I nodded, though my heart was racing. She walked me through every detail. What I'd wear, professional, but not too formal. Where I'd sit, facing the jury, not Dad. How to handle difficult questions. It's okay to cry, it's okay to say you don't remember, it's okay to take breaks. "The most important thing," Linda said, "is to tell the truth. Your truth. Don't exaggerate, don't minimize. Just tell them what happened, how it made you feel, what it cost you. That's all we need." The defense attorney, Bradford Pierce, was known for aggressive cross-examination. Linda warned me he'd try to make me look unreliable, confused, or vengeful. "He'll suggest you misunderstood your father's intentions," she explained. "He'll point to your grief over losing your mother and suggest you misinterpreted caregiving as something sinister. He'll try to make the jury doubt your version of events. But the evidence can be interpreted different ways. Your testimony is what makes it real, what helps the jury understand the human cost. You're not just evidence, Lily. You're the victim and the witness. Your voice is the most powerful thing we have." The night before I was scheduled to testify, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything that had happened over the past year. Naomi sat with me, not saying much, just being present. "Want me to make hot chocolate?" she offered. "I don't think anything will help," I admitted. "That's okay, we can just sit here together." Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison. "You're going to do great tomorrow. Remember, you're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing it for every person who's been betrayed by someone who claimed to love them. Your voice matters. Another text came in. This one from Martha Lee. David and I will be in the courtroom tomorrow. You're not alone in this, sweetheart. And one from Dr. Mitchell. Proud of you. You've come so far. Remember your breathing exercises if you feel overwhelmed. I realized, lying there in the dark, that I wasn't the same broken girl who'd locked herself in that bathroom a year ago. I'd been shattered, yes. But I'd also been rebuilt, piece by people who genuinely cared about me, who saw me as Lily, not as a replacement for someone else, not as an object, but as a whole person worthy of love and protection. Tomorrow, I'd tell my story. Tomorrow, I'd face Dad one last time. Tomorrow, I'd use my voice to make sure he could never hurt anyone else again. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m., exhausted but determined. March 14th arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of early spring day that felt too beautiful for what was about to happen. I dressed in a navy blue blouse and black slacks. Nothing flashy, nothing that would distract from my testimony. Naomi drove me to the Multnomah County Courthouse, her hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze mine. "You've got this," she kept saying. "You're strong. You're ready." The courthouse was an imposing building of concrete and glass in downtown Portland. We had to go through security, empty our bags, walk through metal detectors. Each step felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Linda Rodriguez met us in the hallway outside the courtroom. She looked sharp in her power suit, all business. "Lily, you ready?" Was I? I nodded anyway. "Remember what we practiced. Look at the jury when you answer. Speak clearly. It's okay to take your time. If you need a break, just say so." The courtroom was smaller than I expected from seeing them on TV. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, about 40 seats for spectators. Many of them were filled. Reporters, true crime enthusiasts, survivors from my support group who came to show solidarity. And there, at the defense table, sat my father. He looked different. Smaller somehow, though he hadn't physically shrunk. He'd lost weight in the psychiatric facility, and his hair had gone completely gray. He wore an orange jumpsuit and shackles, sitting between his lawyer and a guard. When I walked in, his head snapped up, and his eyes found mine. The look on his face made my blood run cold. It wasn't the raving madness from the anniversary morning. It was worse. It was tender recognition, a soft smile, the expression of a husband seeing his wife after a long absence. He still saw me as her. After everything, the arrest, the months in custody, the psychiatric evaluations, he still saw Rebecca when he looked at me. I looked away and took my seat in the gallery next to Naomi. Martha and David Lee sat behind us. Detective Morrison gave me an encouraging nod from where she sat with the prosecution team. I was surrounded by people who saw me for who I really was. Linda Rodriguez stood to deliver the opening statement for the prosecution. She spoke with calm authority, laying out the case piece by piece. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about obsession, about a man who loved his wife so much that when she died, he couldn't accept it. So he decided to replace her, and he chose his own daughter as the replacement." She walked the jury through the timeline. Mom's cancer diagnosis, Dad's increasingly controlling behavior, Mom's death, and the subsequent grooming and assault of his daughter. She described the fertility clinic, the drugging, the attempted rape on the anniversary morning. "Michael Anderson didn't just grieve his wife," Linda said, her voice rising with passion. "He murdered her when she became too inconvenient, when her illness was taking too long. And then he tried to remake his daughter in her image, forcing her into a role she never consented to, violating her in the most fundamental way possible." Bradford Pierce, Dad's attorney, stood for the defense. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with a grandfatherly appearance that was completely calculated. "The prosecution wants you to see a monster," he began. "But what I ask you to see is a man destroyed by grief. Michael Anderson watched his beloved wife die of cancer. The woman he'd loved since they were teenagers, his partner of 22 years, wasted away before his eyes. That kind of trauma breaks people." He argued that Dad's actions were the result of a complete psychotic break, that he genuinely couldn't distinguish reality from delusion, that he believed, truly believed, that Lily was Rebecca reborn. This is not a criminal matter, Pierce argued. This is a tragic case of mental illness. My client needs treatment, not prison. He needs compassion, not condemnation. I wanted to stand up and scream at him, but I kept still, hands folded in my lap, waiting for my turn to speak. I was called to testify on the second day of the trial. As I walked to the witness stand, my legs felt like rubber. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at Dad, though I could feel his gaze burning into me. The bailiff swore me in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Linda started with easy questions. My name, Lily Marie Anderson. My age, 24 now. My relationship to the defendant, his daughter. My education, graduate student in social work. Basic establishing facts. Then she asked about Mom. Can you tell the jury about your mother's illness? I took a breath and began. I described Mom's diagnosis, the rapid decline, the final days in the hospital. My voice stayed steady, clinical almost, as I'd practiced. And after your mother died, what changed in your father's behavior? That's when it got harder. I described the refusal to move Mom's things, the video watching, the therapy he abandoned. The jury listened, some taking notes, others just watching my face. When did he first call you by your mother's name? Late April, about 6 weeks after Mom died. I'd just gotten out of the shower, and he called me Rebecca in the hallway. What did you do? I corrected him, reminded him I was Lily, his daughter. He apologized, but I paused, remembering that moment. But something in his eyes had changed. He looked at me differently after that. Linda walked me through everything. The clothes, the shampoo, the bedroom move, the anniversary morning. With each detail, I saw some of the jurors' faces change, horror and disgust replacing their neutral expressions. When we got to the fertility clinic revelation, one of the jurors, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, put her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. And when you discovered you were pregnant, what went through your mind? Terror, I said honestly. I'd never been with anyone. The only explanation was, I couldn't finish the sentence. Take your time, Linda said gently. I breathed, centered myself. The only explanation was that during those days I couldn't remember. When I was drugged and barely conscious, he'd done something to me. And the fertility clinic footage confirmed it. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the sound of someone crying softly in the back. Probably someone from my support group who understood this particular horror. Then Bradford Pierce stood up, and I braced myself. Miss Anderson, he began, his tone deceptively gentle. You loved your father before all this, didn't you? Yes. And he was a good father? Provided for you? Supported your education? Never hurt you before your mother's death? That's correct. So you'd agree that the man who raised you and the man who did these things are two completely different people? I saw where he was going. I'd agree that my father changed after my mother died. Changed or broke? Pierce leaned on the witness box. Isn't it true that watching your mother die was the most traumatic experience of his life? I'm sure it was. But that doesn't excuse... I'm not asking about excuses, Miss Anderson. I'm asking about mental state. Is it possible that your father genuinely believed you were your mother? That in his broken mind, he wasn't attacking his daughter, but trying to reconnect with his wife? Linda objected. Calls for speculation about mental state. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Pierce, rephrase. Miss Anderson, when your father called you Rebecca, did he seem to be pretending? Or did he genuinely seem to believe it? I thought about that. At first, I thought he was just confused, but by the end, yes. I think he believed it. But I also think he chose to believe it. Chose to? How can someone choose their delusions? Because he knew I wasn't Mom. In the recordings, he talks about helping me remember being Rebecca, about bringing her back. That means he knew she was gone. He just decided to replace her with me anyway. Pierce tried several more angles, suggesting I misunderstood his intentions, that the anniversary celebration was just a grief-stricken man trying to honor his wife's memory, that maybe I'd consented to the fertility treatment and didn't remember due to trauma. But Linda had prepared me well. I stayed calm, stuck to the facts, and didn't let him twist my words. Finally, Pierce asked, Miss Anderson, despite everything, Do you still love your father? I thought about that question for a long time. The courtroom waited. I love the man who raised me, I said finally. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who helped with my homework, who drove me to soccer practice. But that man died when Mom did. The person sitting over there. I finally looked at Dad, making eye contact. That's not my father anymore. That's a stranger who stole my father's face. Dad's expression crumpled. He started crying, reaching toward me. Rebecca, no. Baby, I'm still me. I'm still your Michael. Don't you remember? The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Anderson, you will remain silent or be removed from this courtroom. I looked away and didn't meet his eyes again. Over the next 3 days, Linda built an overwhelming case. Dr. Harrison, Dad's grief counselor, testified that Dad had stopped attending sessions because he didn't want to hear that his wife was dead. The therapist's notes included concerning statements Dad had made about keeping Rebecca alive through their daughter. The fertility clinic staff testified about Dad's visits, how he'd spun an elaborate story about his wife wanting to have another child before her death, how he'd seemed perfectly lucid and rational when arranging everything. Hospital staff from Portland General testified about Dad's unusual behavior in the last days of Mom's life, how he'd been found in her room after hours, how medication had gone missing from the supply cart near her room. Detective Morrison presented the security footage from the cemetery, playing Dad's full confession. The courtroom was silent as his voice filled the space, describing how he'd helped Rebecca rest by increasing her morphine. A forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Elena Martinez, testified about Dad's mental state. Mr. Anderson suffers from a delusional disorder, yes, but he maintains awareness of reality. He knows his wife is dead. He knows Lily is his daughter. He simply chose to overlay his fantasy onto that reality. That's not the same as insanity. Patricia took the stand, looking broken and ashamed. She testified about visiting Dad in the psychiatric facility, about believing his delusion was somehow romantic, about planning to help him escape. I missed my sister so much, she sobbed, and Michael's love for her was so strong. I thought if Lily could just embrace being Rebecca, then we'd have her back. I know how insane that sounds now, but grief makes you crazy. The prosecution rested after 5 days of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, medical records, recorded confessions, witness testimony. There was no reasonable doubt. Bradford Pierce called only 2 witnesses for the defense. Dr. Robert Chen, a psychiatrist from Oregon State Hospital, testified that Dad suffered from severe delusional disorder with erotomanic features. He's not faking this. He genuinely experiences these delusions as reality. But under Linda's cross-examination, Dr. Chen admitted, yes, he understands that most people believe his wife is dead and his daughter is not his wife. He simply doesn't accept that reality as truth. So he's aware that his beliefs conflict with objective reality? Yes, but... And he acted on those beliefs anyway, knowing others would view his actions as criminal. He believed his love justified his actions. That's not mental illness, doctor. That's a choice. The second defense witness was Dad himself. Against his lawyer's advice, Dad insisted on testifying. I think he couldn't resist the chance to tell our love story to the world. He spoke calmly, articulately, describing his love for Mom as something transcendent and eternal. Death is just a technicality, he said. True love doesn't end. Rebecca and I made vows, for better or worse, in sickness and health, till death do us part. Well, death did part us. But I found a way around that. Pierce tried to redirect him, to emphasize his mental illness. But Dad wouldn't cooperate. I'm not crazy, he insisted. I understand what most people think happened. They think I assaulted my daughter. But they're wrong. My daughter died with Rebecca. The person I see when I look at Lily is my wife, reborn. She just needs help remembering who she really is. Linda's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Anderson, you understand that the law says Lily is your daughter? I understand that's what the law says. And you understand that having sexual contact with one's daughter is illegal? Of course. But that's not what I did. I made love to my wife. Your wife who looks exactly like your daughter? Who has your daughter's DNA? Who was born from your daughter's body? My wife, who shares Rebecca's soul. It went on like that for 2 hours. Dad remained calm, rational, explaining his delusion as if it were perfectly logical. The jury watched with undisguised disgust. The most damning moment came when Linda asked, "Did you know that what you were doing would be perceived as wrong by others?" "Yes." "And you did it anyway?" "Yes, because love transcends human law. God brought Rebecca back to me through our daughter. Who am I to question divine will?" Linda's closing argument was powerful and emotional. Michael Anderson knew right from wrong, she told the jury. He understood that others would view his actions as criminal. He simply didn't care, because he believed his love justified anything: rape, murder, kidnapping, the destruction of his daughter's autonomy and identity. She walked them through the evidence again, piece by piece, building an unassailable case. This isn't a love story. It's a horror story. It's about a man who couldn't accept loss, so he decided to recreate what he'd lost using his own daughter. He murdered his dying wife to speed up his plan. He drugged and violated his daughter. He attempted to rape her on what would have been his wedding anniversary. And he's asking you to excuse all of this because he was sad? She looked at each juror in turn. Grief is real. Mental illness is real. But so is personal responsibility. Michael Anderson made choices: to stop therapy, to stockpile drugs, to plan this violation months in advance. Those were choices, and choices have consequences. Bradford Pierce's closing argument emphasized Dad's mental illness, his genuine delusions, his complete break from reality. Yes, what he did was terrible. Yes, Lily suffered horribly. But putting a mentally ill man in prison doesn't serve justice. He needs treatment, supervision, ongoing psychiatric care. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. We were called back to the courtroom at 4:30 p.m. My hands were shaking so badly that Naomi had to help me stand. The jury filed in, their faces grave. The foreperson, a middle-aged black man in a business suit, stood when the judge asked if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder in the second degree, how do you find?" "Guilty." Dad made a sound, half gasp, half sob. "On the charge of rape in the first degree, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the charge of unlawful imprisonment, how do you find?" "Guilty." It went on. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Every single charge. The jury hadn't bought the insanity defense for a second. When it was over, Dad turned to look at me. Tears streamed down his face. "Rebecca," he called out, desperate. Tell them we love each other. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." The judge ordered him removed from the courtroom. As the guards led him away, he kept calling out, "I did this for us, for our love. Rebecca, please, don't let them do this. We're supposed to be together forever." His voice echoed down the hallway until a door slammed somewhere, cutting off the sound. I sat in the courtroom, surrounded by people hugging and crying with relief, and felt empty. Not happy, not sad, just empty. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase what happened. It didn't give me back my innocence, my father, my mother, my normal life. But it did give me something: closure and safety. He couldn't hurt me anymore. 6 weeks later, we returned for sentencing. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Williams, had read all the testimony, all the evidence, all the psychiatric evaluations. "Mr. Anderson," she began, "I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen terrible things: murders, rapes, child abuse. But rarely have I seen such a complete betrayal of trust as what you perpetrated against your daughter." Dad tried to interrupt, to explain about Rebecca, but she cut him off. "You will not speak unless I ask you a direct question. You've had your say. Now it's time to face consequences." She sentenced him to life in prison, without the possibility of parole on the murder charge. 25 years to life on the rape charge. 10 years on each count of unlawful imprisonment, stalking, and assault. All to run consecutively. You will spend the rest of your natural life in a psychiatric facility within the prison system, Judge Williams said. You will receive treatment for your mental illness, but you will never be free. You've proven yourself too dangerous, too willing to harm others in service of your delusions. She turned to me. "Miss Anderson, Do you wish to make a statement? I'd prepared one, written and rewritten it a dozen times. I stood, my legs shaking, and pulled the paper from my pocket. I want my father back, I read, my voice breaking. I want the man who taught me to ride a bike, who helped me with my science projects, who drove me to soccer practice. But that man is gone. The person sitting here destroyed him as surely as he destroyed my mother. I looked at Dad for the first time since the verdict. He was crying, reaching out to me. You took everything from me, I continued. My mother, my father, my innocence, my sense of safety. You took my identity and tried to replace it with someone else's. You looked at me and saw a ghost. You never saw me, Lily, your daughter, a real person with my own hopes and dreams and autonomy. My voice grew stronger. But here's what you didn't take: my will to survive, my ability to heal, my future. I'm not defined by what you did to me. I'm defined by what I choose to do next. And I choose to live, to thrive, to help other survivors, to turn this horror into something meaningful. I folded the paper. I hope you get the help you need. But I also hope I never see you again. Goodbye, Michael Anderson. I sat down. Dad sobbed openly, calling out, Rebecca, please, I love you, until the judge had him gagged and removed. Aunt Patricia pleaded guilty to being an accessory to attempted kidnapping and received 5 years probation with mandatory psychiatric treatment. She lost her medical records job, lost custody of her 2 children to her ex-husband, lost the respect of our entire family. Uncle Robert, her ex-husband, brought their kids, my cousins Jake and Sophie, to meet me one afternoon at a coffee shop. They were confused, scared, trying to understand how their mother could have been involved in something so terrible. Your mom was sick with grief, I told them gently. She missed Aunt Rebecca so much that she stopped thinking clearly. She did terrible things, but she's getting help now. Sophie, who was 12, asked, Do you hate her? I thought about it. I'm angry at her. I'm hurt by her. But hate? No. I pity her. She let grief destroy her judgment, and now she's lost almost everything. That's punishment enough. The kids seemed to understand. We started meeting regularly, coffee once a week, helping them process their mother's fall from grace, giving them a stable family connection when everything else felt uncertain. 6 months after the trial, I filed paperwork to legally change my name. Lily Marie Anderson became Catherine Rose Mitchell. Catherine for my maternal grandmother, Rose for my mother's middle name, Mitchell from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who'd saved my sanity. The judge who approved it was Judge Williams from the criminal trial. She smiled when she saw my petition. Good for you, she said. Starting fresh. Not fresh, I corrected. Reclaimed. These names honor the women who loved me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. The day my new driver's license arrived with my new name felt like being born again. Catherine Rose Mitchell. A person Dad had never met, never touched, never contaminated with his delusions. I completed my master's degree and started working at Trauma Recovery Center, a nonprofit specializing in family abuse cases. My own experience made me uniquely qualified to help others who'd been betrayed by people who claimed to love them. I started leading support groups, first locally, then expanding online. Every Thursday evening, survivors from across the country would log on to share their stories, their strategies, their hard-won wisdom. This is Catherine, I'd introduce myself. I'm a survivor of familial sexual assault and psychological abuse. I'm here to listen, to support, and to remind you that what happened to you wasn't your fault. Some sessions were quiet, people too raw to share. Others were explosive, anger and pain pouring out. But slowly, over weeks and months, I watched people heal. Watched them reclaim their identities, their power, their lives. I published essays about trauma recovery in psychology journals and magazines. I gave talks at universities and conferences. I trained other therapists on recognizing signs of familial abuse, on building trust with survivors, on understanding the complex dynamics of family betrayal. My work gave me purpose. It transformed my horror into something meaningful. Martha and David Lee remained central to my life. We had dinner together every Sunday, a tradition that felt like coming home. They'd legally named me as their heir, joking that I was the daughter they'd gotten back. Naomi and I remained roommates, our friendship deepening into something like sisterhood. She understood trauma from her professional work, but she also just got me as a person. My quirks, my healing process, my need for both support and independence. Detective Morrison and I became close friends. She'd text me articles about justice reform, invite me to her family barbecues, call just to check in. She was fighting her own battles with the system, trying to change how police handled sexual assault cases. We supported each other's work. Marcus from my support group became another important friend. He'd been assaulted by his uncle and understood the particular shame of family abuse. We'd meet for lunch and compare notes on healing, on setbacks, on small victories. Dr. Mitchell continued as my therapist, even after I became a therapist myself. You can't heal others if you're not tending your own wounds, she reminded me regularly. I started dating again, cautiously. A guy from my graduate program named Joel, who was patient with my triggers, who never pressured me, who saw me as Catherine, whole and complex and worthy of gentle love. It didn't last, but it taught me I could trust someone again, could be intimate without terror. The first anniversary of Mom's real death, acknowledging it as murder, not cancer, came in February, 2 years after her passing. I visited her grave alone, bringing white roses. The headstone had been updated after the trial. Instead of beloved wife and mother, it now read, Rebecca Marie Anderson, beloved mother, sister, friend. Her light was stolen too soon, but her love remains. I sat by her grave and talked to her the way I wished I could have while she was alive. Told her about my new name, my work, my healing. Told her about the support network that had formed around me. Told her I understood why she'd stayed with Dad during her illness. Insurance, stability, hope that he'd get better. I forgive you for not warning me, I said aloud. You couldn't have known how bad it would get. You thought you'd die before anything happened. You were trying to protect me in the only way you knew how. The wind rustled through the trees, warm for February. I chose to interpret it as her response. I'm okay now, Mom. Or I'm getting there. Some days are harder than others. But I'm building a life you'd be proud of. I'm helping people. I'm choosing to survive rather than just exist. And I'm doing it with a name that honors you and Grandma Catherine, the women who loved me for exactly who I am. I stayed for an hour, telling her everything. When I left, I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying had finally lifted. 2 years after the trial, Patricia reached out to me. She'd completed her court-mandated therapy, attended every support group meeting, written me letters I'd never responded to. Now she was asking to meet in person. Against Dr. Mitchell's advice. You don't owe her anything, Catherine, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a small park in Selwood, with her therapist present as a mediator. Patricia looked older, worn down by guilt and consequences. She'd lost weight, and her blonde hair was streaked with gray. I don't expect you to forgive me, she started, tears already flowing. What I did was unforgivable. I enabled a monster. I prioritized my grief over your safety. I betrayed my sister's memory and my niece's trust. I let her talk. She needed to say it, and I needed to hear it. I've been in therapy for 2 years, working on why I did what I did. My therapist says I had what's called complicated grief. I couldn't accept Rebecca's death, so when Michael offered me a way to bring her back, I grabbed onto it. But that's not an excuse, just an explanation. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice flat. Nothing. I want to give something to you. She pulled an envelope from her purse. These are letters from Rebecca. She wrote them in the last weeks of her life, one for each milestone, your graduation, your wedding, your first job. She asked me to hold them until the right time. I was supposed to give them to you, but I was so twisted up in grief that I held on to them like they were pieces of her. My hands shook as I took the envelope. Mom's handwriting on the outside. For Lily, to be opened when the time is right. There's also money, Patricia continued. Rebecca's life insurance. It was supposed to go to you, but Michael had control of the estate. Now that he's been convicted, it reverts to you. It's not much, about $200,000. But it's yours. Use it for school, for a house, for whatever you need. I stared at the envelope, tears blurring my vision. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Patricia repeated. I'm asking for a chance to make amends, to honor Rebecca's memory properly this time, to support you in whatever way you'll let me. I thought about it for a long time, about how grief can break people, how family systems can fail, how victims aren't the only ones who need to heal. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said finally. Maybe I never will be, but I'm willing to let you prove you've changed. Start by being a good aunt to Jake and Sophie. They need you to be healthy and present. Show me you can do that. I will, she promised. I swear I will. I didn't open Mom's letters right away. I carried them around for weeks, feeling their weight in my bag, knowing they contained her voice, her wisdom, her love. Finally, on a quiet Sunday morning in my apartment, with Naomi sitting beside me for support, I opened the first letter. It was dated for my graduation from undergrad, an event that had happened while she was in hospice. My darling Lily, it began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, but you've accomplished something amazing. You've graduated. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I wish I could be there to see you walk across that stage in your cap and gown. I sobbed through the entire letter. She wrote about her hopes for my future, her confidence in my strength, her absolute certainty that I would do great things. Life is going to throw hard things at you, she wrote toward the end. It already has, losing me. But you're stronger than you know. You have a good heart, a sharp mind, and people who love you. Don't let fear or grief or anyone else's expectations define your path. Be authentically, courageously yourself. There were 5 more letters, one for my master's graduation, which I'd already had, one for my wedding, whenever that might happen, one for my first real job, one for my 30th birthday, and one labeled simply, When You Need Me Most. I opened that last one. My sweet girl, Mom wrote. I don't know what brought you to this letter. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's fear, maybe it's doubt about your worth or your purpose. But whatever it is, I need you to know. You are loved beyond measure. You are enough, exactly as you are. No one has the right to tell you who you should be or who you should become. She wrote about identity, about the pressure to conform to others' expectations, about the importance of protecting your authentic self. Your name is Lily Marie Anderson, and that name represents a unique, irreplaceable person. Don't let anyone steal that from you. Don't let anyone convince you that you're supposed to be anyone other than yourself. It was like she'd known. Like somehow, dying from cancer, she'd sensed what Dad would try to do. If I could give you one gift, she concluded, it would be the unshakable knowledge of your own worth. You are not defined by relationships, not by me, not by your father, not by anyone you'll meet in the future. You're defined by your choices, your values, your actions. Be kind, be strong, be yourself. That's all I've ever wanted for you. I held that letter to my chest and cried until I had no tears left. Even in death, Mom was protecting me, guiding me, loving me. 3 years after the trial, I stood in front of 40 undergraduates at Portland State University, guest lecturing for a psychology class on trauma and recovery. My name is Dr. Catherine Mitchell, I introduced myself. I'd completed my PhD a year earlier, my dissertation on familial sexual assault and identity reconstruction. I'm a trauma therapist and a survivor of family abuse. Today, I want to talk about healing, what it looks like, what it requires, and why it's possible even after the worst betrayals. I told my story, not in explicit detail, but enough that the students understood the stakes. Several of them were crying by the end. One young woman raised her hand. How did you stop being afraid? She asked. I didn't, I said honestly. I'm still afraid sometimes. I have nightmares. I struggle with trust. I carry pepper spray and check locks obsessively. But fear doesn't control me anymore. I control it. I acknowledge it. I thank it for trying to protect me. And then I do the scary thing anyway. Another student asked, Do you forgive your father? I thought about that question, which I got asked a lot. Forgiveness is complicated. Some days I pity him. He destroyed himself chasing a delusion. Some days I'm furious at him for what he stole from me. Most days I just don't think about him. He's in prison, getting treatment, and that's where he needs to be. My job isn't to forgive him. My job is to heal myself and help others heal too. After the lecture, 3 students approached me privately. They had similar stories: family members who'd violated boundaries, relationships that had turned abusive, identities that had been stolen. I gave them my card, pointed them toward resources, reminded them they weren't alone. This was my purpose. Not just surviving, but creating a network of survivors who support each other, who refuse to be defined by what happened to them, who transform pain into power. I started a second support group specifically for survivors of identity theft abuse, people whose abusers had tried to remake them into someone else. It was a more specific subset of abuse than most people realized, but there were more of us than I'd expected. There was Jennifer, whose stepfather had tried to turn her into his dead daughter. Marcus, whose grandmother had insisted he was her deceased husband reincarnated. Elena, whose boyfriend had slowly isolated and reshaped her into his ex-girlfriend. David, whose mother had dressed him in his dead sister's clothes and called him by her name. We met every other Tuesday, sharing strategies for reclaiming identity, for setting boundaries, for healing the specific wounds of having your selfhood denied. "What helped you most?" Jennifer asked me during one session. She was where I'd been 3 years ago, raw, broken, barely functional. "Time," I said, "and therapy, and finding purpose, and surrounding myself with people who saw me for who I really was, not who they wanted me to be." "Did you ever feel like yourself again?" "I feel like a new version of myself," I answered. "I'm not the same Lily who existed before this happened. That innocence is gone. But I'm Catherine now, stronger, wiser, more compassionate than Lily could have been. The trauma changed me, but I got to decide how." 4 years after his conviction, I received a letter from Dad. It had been screened by the prison and cleared by my therapist before being forwarded to me. Dr. Mitchell asked if I wanted to read it. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me is curious. Part of me wants to throw it away unread." "There's no wrong choice," she said. "You can read it now, later, or never. You can read it alone or with support. You can burn it unopened if you want. This is your decision." I decided to read it with Dr. Mitchell present, in the safety of her office. Dad's handwriting was shakier than I remembered, but still recognizable. The letter was surprisingly lucid. "Lily. I'm calling you Lily because my therapist says that's important. She says using your real name is part of accepting reality. I'm trying. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. What I did was unforgivable. I know that now. It's taken years of medication and therapy, but I finally understand that you're my daughter, not Rebecca reborn. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says making amends is part of my treatment, and because I need you to know, none of this was your fault. You were the victim. I was the monster. I murdered your mother. I violated you. I stole your sense of safety and identity. I destroyed our family. All because I couldn't accept loss, couldn't handle grief in a healthy way, couldn't see you as a separate person from her. I'm on medication now. Antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, anti-anxiety meds. I attend group therapy 5 times a week. I'm learning to distinguish reality from delusion, though it's harder than you'd think. My brain wants to slip back into the fantasy. It's easier to believe Rebecca is alive than to face what I did. But I'm trying to stay present in reality, trying to be the father I should have been. Even if it's too late, even if you never want to see me again, I hope you're healing. I hope you've found peace. I hope you've built a good life with people who see you for exactly who you are. Your father, though I know I lost that right, Michael Anderson. I folded the letter carefully and looked at Dr. Mitchell. "What do I do with this?" "What do you want to do with it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe he's actually getting better. Part of me thinks it's another manipulation. Both can be true," she said. "He may be genuinely improving and still be manipulative. He may understand intellectually what he did wrong, but not emotionally grasp the full impact. Recovery from delusion is complicated." "Do I respond?" "Only if you want to. You don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not acknowledgement, not engagement. This letter is about his healing, not yours. Your healing is separate and doesn't require his participation." I thought about it for days. Finally, I wrote a brief response. "Michael, I received your letter. I acknowledge your apology, though I'm not ready to forgive. I hope you continue treatment and stay grounded in reality. I'm building a good life, surrounded by people who love me for who I am. That's all you need to know. Don't write again. Catherine. I never heard from him again. 2 years later, I married Joel Martinez, the gentle PhD student who'd become my partner in healing. We'd dated for 3 years, taking things slowly, building trust, learning each other's triggers and boundaries. Joel had his own trauma history, childhood poverty, an abusive stepfather, time in foster care. We understood each other's scars. Our relationship was built on mutual respect, clear communication, and the shared understanding that love shouldn't hurt. The wedding was small, 30 people in David and Martha Lee's backyard on a sunny Saturday in May. Martha had planted roses specially for the occasion, filling the yard with their sweet scent. I could handle roses again now, had reclaimed them from Dad's twisted anniversary. I wore a simple white dress, not the elaborate gown Dad had probably imagined Rebecca wearing. Joel wore a blue suit, beaming at me like I was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. Not because I reminded him of anyone else, but because he loved me. Catherine, exactly as I was. Naomi was my maid of honor, standing beside me in a soft peach dress. Marcus stood up for Joel. Detective Morrison sat in the front row next to Martha and David, all three of them crying happy tears. Uncle Robert brought Jake and Sophie, who were teenagers now, and thriving despite their mother's fall from grace. Patricia wasn't invited, but she'd sent a gift, a photo album of Mom and me together throughout my childhood, with a note. Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become. Dr. Mitchell officiated the wedding, having gotten ordained online specifically for this. Love, she said in her ceremony remarks, isn't about possession or obsession or remaking someone in your image. It's about seeing someone clearly, all their flaws and fears and weird quirks, and choosing them anyway. It's about supporting their growth, respecting their autonomy, and being a safe harbor in life's storms. When Joel and I exchanged vows, I added something not in the traditional script. I promise to always see you as you are, not who I wish you were. I promise to respect your boundaries and support your dreams. I promise that my love will never demand you become anything other than your authentic self. Joel promised the same. We danced to At Last by Etta James, reclaiming that song from Dad's twisted anniversary. It was our song now, mine and Joel's, representing actual love rather than delusional obsession. 5 years after the trial, a publisher approached me about writing a book. They'd read my articles, attended my lectures, followed my work in trauma recovery. They wanted a memoir combined with a self-help guide for survivors of identity abuse. I titled it, The Name That Haunted Me, Reclaiming Identity After Family Betrayal. Writing it was brutally difficult. I had to revisit every terrible moment, every violation, every time Dad had called me Rebecca. But I also got to write about recovery, the support network, the therapy, the slow rebuilding of self. The book included chapters on recognizing identity theft abuse, why family perpetrators are particularly damaging, building a support network, working with trauma-informed therapists, reclaiming your identity through naming, boundaries, and purpose, helping others heal as part of your own recovery. I included practical exercises, resources, and stories from other survivors, with their permission. I wanted it to be more than just my story. I wanted it to be a roadmap for anyone struggling with similar trauma. The book became a bestseller in the psychology and self-help categories. I got emails from survivors around the world, people in Japan, Brazil, Germany, Australia, all saying some version of, I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing me I'm not. I did a book tour, speaking at bookstores and universities. At each event, survivors would line up to share their stories, to thank me, to ask for advice. Some had been remade into dead siblings, dead spouses, even dead children. Others had been forced into role-playing their abusers' fantasies. All of them needed to know they could heal. How long does it take? Someone always asked. The rest of your life, I'd answer honestly. But it gets easier. The nightmares fade. The triggers become less frequent. You build a life where trauma is part of your story, but not the whole story. You become bigger than what happened to you. 7 years after my mother's murder, I stood in front of a new support group, introducing myself to fresh faces full of pain and confusion. My name is Dr. Catherine Mitchell, I began. 7 years ago, my father murdered my mother and tried to replace her with me. He drugged me, violated me, tried to erase who I was, and remake me into someone else. He called me by her name until I forgot what my own name sounded like. I paused, looking at each person in the circle. 12 survivors, ranging from age 18 to 65, all carrying the weight of family betrayal. I'm telling you this not to trauma dump, but to give you hope. 7 years ago, I was exactly where you are now, broken, scared, not sure if healing was even possible. But look at me now. I'm married to someone who loves me for exactly who I am. I have a PhD. I run multiple support groups. I wrote a best-selling book. I've helped hundreds of survivors reclaim their identities. A young woman raised her hand. She looked about 19, with red-rimmed eyes and a defeated slump to her shoulders. Did you ever get your father back? The good version of him? I shook my head. No. That man is gone. The person in prison is a stranger wearing my father's face. And I had to grieve that loss. Not just the loss of my mother, but the loss of the father I thought I had. That grief is real and valid. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked. It stops consuming you, I said. It becomes a scar instead of an open wound. Some days you'll barely notice it. Other days it'll ache. But it won't destroy you, not unless you let it. I looked around the circle again. You're all here because someone who claimed to love you tried to steal your identity. They tried to make you into someone else, someone who fit their needs, their fantasies, their delusions. But here's what I need you to understand. They failed. Several people were crying now. You're still here. You're still you. Traumatized, yes. Changed, absolutely. But fundamentally, essentially, the core of who you are survived. And now your job, our job together, is to reclaim what was stolen. To remember who you were before the abuse, to figure out who you are now, and to decide who you want to become. After the meeting, the young woman approached me. My name is Emma, she said. My stepfather keeps calling me by his dead daughter's name. I feel like I'm going crazy. You're not crazy, I assured her. You're being systematically erased by someone who should protect you. But you found this group, which means part of you is fighting back. That's strong, Emma. Hold on to that strength. Can I call you sometimes, when it gets bad? I handed her my card. Anytime, day or night, I mean that. 8 years after the trial, I sat in my home office, converted from the spare bedroom of the house Joel and I had bought in southeast Portland. The walls were covered with thank you cards from survivors, photos of my support groups, my framed PhD, the cover of my book. I was preparing for a TED Talk on trauma recovery, scheduled for next month. My notes were scattered across the desk, but I kept getting distracted by the sunshine coming through the window, the sound of Joel cooking dinner in the kitchen, the normalcy of my life. This was what healing looked like. Not dramatic breakthroughs or sudden transformations, but small, ordinary moments of peace and contentment. Feeling safe in my own home, having healthy relationships, pursuing meaningful work, laughing without guilt, sleeping without nightmares. Well, mostly. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer, one of my first support group members. 2 years clean from self-harm, starting college in the fall. Thank you for showing me this was possible. Another text. This one from Marcus. Just gave my first speech at a conference. Talked about my recovery. People actually listened, felt powerful. This was the other part of healing. Watching others find their way back to themselves. Being part of a community of survivors who lifted each other up. I opened my laptop and started writing my TED Talk notes. My father called me by the wrong name for months. He looked at me and saw someone else. Someone dead. Someone I could never be. He tried to erase who I was and replace me with his fantasy. But here's the thing about identity. It's resilient. It bends under pressure, but it doesn't break completely. Even when I was called Rebecca every day, even when I was dressed in her clothes and expected to smile like her and move like her, some core part of me remained Lily. Then Catherine, always essentially myself. That's the message I want to leave you with today. You are who you are, regardless of what others try to make you. Your identity might be challenged, violated, obscured, but it can't be destroyed unless you let it be. And if you've been made to feel invisible, if someone has tried to remake you into their image, if you've lost yourself in someone else's expectations, you can find yourself again. It takes work, it takes support, it takes time, but it's possible. I'm living proof. Epilogue. 10 years later. The anniversary of Mom's death no longer filled me with dread. Instead, I spent it honoring her memory, visiting her grave, looking through photo albums, cooking her recipes, sharing stories with people who'd known her. Dad died in prison when I was 34. A heart attack, sudden and unexpected. The prison called to inform me. I felt nothing. Not sadness, not relief. Just a distant acknowledgement that the man who'd raised me had been dead for years anyway. This was just his body catching up. I didn't attend his funeral. Patricia did, along with a few distant relatives. I spent that day at the beach with Joel and our daughter. Yes, daughter. We'd adopted a 3-year-old named Rosa 2 years earlier, a bright, joyful child who called me Mama Cat and filled our home with laughter. Being a mother terrified me initially. What if I had inherited some darkness from Dad? What if I damaged her the way he'd damaged me? But Dr. Mitchell helped me understand that awareness was my shield. I was so conscious of the potential for harm that I'd never let it happen. I'd break the cycle, and I did. Rosa grew up surrounded by love, boundaries, respect for her autonomy. She knew she was adopted, knew my story, age appropriately, knew that family was about choice and care, not biology. She was becoming her own person, creative, stubborn, endlessly curious, and we celebrated that. My support groups continued, now running 6 different groups for various trauma survivors. My book had spawned a second one, then a third. I'd become an expert in my field, invited to speak at conferences, to consult on trauma recovery programs, to train new therapists. But my favorite work remained the support groups, sitting in circles with survivors, watching them slowly unfold from their protective shells, witnessing their transformation from victims to survivors to advocates. Does it ever really end? Someone always asked. The healing? No, I'd answer honestly, because you're not trying to get back to who you were before. That person doesn't exist anymore. You're creating someone new, someone who has survived and grown and carries wisdom earned through pain. That creation process is ongoing. The healing never ends because you never stop evolving. I'd learned to live with my scars. Some days they ached. Some days they reminded me of my strength. Most days they were just part of who I was. Catherine Rose Mitchell, survivor, therapist, author, wife, mother, advocate. My father had tried to steal my identity, to replace me with a ghost. But I'd reclaimed it, rebuilt it, made it stronger than it was before. I'd taken the name he'd tried to erase and made it into something powerful. And now I helped others do the same. That was my happy ending. Not perfect, not unmarked, but mine. Authentically, courageously mine.